It'll be fine.
Yeah. No, think of it.
We'll hear it.
Okay. Okay. So, I didn't think I'd already. About me, up until about 2 years ago, I was a lifetime resident of Wichita Falls. I've been married for 12 years. I have 4 kids, Emma, Ava, who is our survivor, Hudson, and then Libby. She's 8 months. She's my newest. When Jackie called me back in January and asked me if I'd be willing to speak tonight, the first thing I said was, so like, who's speaking after me? Like, who's the real speaker? And she was like, oh no, you're it. And I was like, that's okay, I'm sorry, because it's not, I mean, there's this. I don't know what's going to happen from here. Okay, so I'm just a little bit nervous, not really the size of the room nervous. So. Other than in parent support groups and in one-on-one conversations, just getting to know people. I've never shared a story on like a platform like this, so I'm very honored that I was asked to speak, and I hope that I can just get through it. I think I can if I can just get on with it. Okay. One of my favorite parts about the Relay for Life is specifically the emphasis that it places on not just recognizing those who are recently diagnosed or are currently going through treatment, but also on the recognition that it gives caregivers. I'm sure other survivors in the room would join in with my daughter in saying that because of the support and love that caregivers often provide, that some of those difficult times would perhaps have been impossible without them. My role as a caregiver began on May 16, 2012. My daughter, Ava Kate, was 2.5 at the time. We had taken her to a pediatrician because she had just kind of a weird rash on her abdomen around her waist. We weren't really sure what it was. In the back of my mind, honestly, I thought she had like a virus, maybe mono. I didn't anticipate this diagnosis that was coming. The pediatrician ordered some blood work. Again, I wasn't worried at that point. I was a little nervous for the tech having to draw Ava's blood. Only because if you've ever met Ava, she can be a little feisty. I mean, I know all toddlers are at one point or another, but Ava she's just a mess. So other than that, I was calm. We went home. When about the day, I made lunch for my kids. About noon, the phone rang, and I had just sat down. Hudson, who was number 3 of my 4, was 3 months old at the time, and I just sat down on the couch to feed him. The phone happened to be right beside me, so I picked it up, recognized the number on the caller ID. It was Dr. Johnson's office calling to say that they had the results of Ava's blood screen in, and I could just tell by Dr. Catacall's voice that what she was about to say wasn't anything that I necessarily wanted to hear, in a sense. She told me that Ava's blood work, her numbers were just off. Her red blood cell count was really, really low. Her white blood cell count was high, and then her platelets were also really low. And she didn't specifically say anything that led me to believe that there was an impending diagnosis of cancer coming. But at the end of her speech that I was trying to listen to, I was on the phone thinking, you need to pay attention to what this woman is saying, because she's probably giving information that you're going to need later. But all I could do was, just try to just keep breathing, because it was just overwhelming. But one of the things I did catch when she was saying is, when you get to Cook's, go to the 5th floor in the North Tower. Dr. Heim, he has your file, and he's waiting on you. He's the head of the pediatric oncology unit there. So immediately, like after that, she said a few more things, And I'm not even sure that I told her goodbye. I don't really remember all that. I just know that I was holding Hudson, and I felt like I couldn't feel him in my arms anymore. So I kind of just fell down to the floor, like dropped to my knees and just laid him there and cried like I have never cried in my life. I'm a Christian, and so in that moment, I was just crying out to God. Just, for anything at that point, I just didn't understand all the dynamics of what was going on. Just for peace and comfort, for so many things. Sorry. Dr. Catacall, in her wisdom, also phoned my husband, Rob, probably because she knew that I would never be able to pass on the information that she had relayed. So in the time it took for me to kind of get up off the floor, he was already on his way to the house to meet me. I phoned a very good friend at the time and just could barely get out the words of what was going on, and tied up some things with my other kids, had to get my oldest one picked up from school, and then had to find someone to watch Hudson. So I did all that. At the time, we were part of a very close church. And in just the few people that I had to call, who happened to all be members, that was the extent of our friend list. The whole church knew within, I would say an hour or two. It was pretty crazy, the amount of support and prayers and just love and everything that was pouring in was really a crucial thing in that moment. I feel like that it really kind of sustained us and got us through. Several people, probably about 7 to 8, even showed up at the house before we could even get out the door, as I'm throwing, just anything in bags, trying to decide what to take, what not to take, and just get on the road. People were pulling up into our driveway and just like hugging us and praying, and just, they were there, they were support. It was amazing. When we arrived at Cook's, Dr. Heim was waiting, just as promised. He explained that what would be happening next over the course of the rest of the day, they were going to do some more blood work and determine the type of leukemia that we were dealing with. And that was really the first time that a specific word was attached to her diagnosis for us. Like, we kind of hung on that, and it was just a lot to process in the first few days, obviously. We got the results back within a few hours, and I'll never forget the way Dr. Heim worded it when he came back into the room. He said, there are 2 major types of leukemia, and not that you can call one kind of cancer good and one kind of cancer bad, because no cancer is good and you never want a cancer diagnosis. But if there was one you could pick, you would pick ALL. Like, for children, I feel like it is different for adults and children, but for children, the survival rates are just significantly higher. When you have that, the treatment works really well on both ends, but the chance of relapse is significantly low, the chance of secondary cancer is low, so he was just saying, like, this is the one you want. But, then he said, but Ava has the bad one, and it's AML. I literally, at that moment, after he kind of connected those two for me, felt my heart sink, and I didn't even know at that point that it could really sink anymore, because we were already kind of in this whirlwind. It took me back to 2 years ago when we took Ava into Dr. Johnson's office for a 2-week checkup. He said, we ran some tests on Ava while she was in the hospital, and I thought, well, okay, she failed one of her hearing tests, and her vision screening was kind of off, so maybe they just did some further testing to kind of, see where that stuff was at. Okay, I'm ready, go ahead and tell me. This is what I'm saying in my head, obviously. And then he goes, well, the test came back, and she has Down syndrome. To say I was shocked would have probably been an understatement. And not that, to me, she still isn't perfect, and we don't love her completely for who she is, but in that moment, all I could see were the things she would never do, or the challenges she would always have. So, that being now fast forward back to that cook's room, it felt like one of those moments all over again, in a sense. So I lost a lot of what Dr. Heim was saying, by the time I kind of made it back to where, we were all talking and I'm focused and dialing in on his words, he ended her diagnosis with, but children with Down syndrome respond much, much different, in fact, marvelously to the treatment that we're going to have to put her on. He said for whatever reason, whether it's that extra chromosome or something else that science hasn't really pinpointed yet, they respond with significantly lower numbers of relapse and significantly lower numbers of secondary cancer ever developing. Whereas if a normal child had developed AML, that's not always the case. The percentages are much higher. So for me, at that moment, more than any in my whole life, it's very isolated. I can remember it like I'm there right now. I knew that that was no mistake for years. I'm sorry. I had questioned God in anger and just in all honesty, just questions, in sometimes resentment probably, just asking why, why did it have to be Ava? Why? I just didn't understand. I don't know, and I knew that I was never gonna get those answers, but as a mom, it was just hard for me to understand why my child had to struggle to do some things. But on that day, I got to begin thanking God, because it was like he connected those pieces.
Amen.
And he just said, just in my spirit, it was just like, this is why.
Right.
This is why. That verse in Psalms says, be still and know I am God. I felt like literally the earth was not spinning. Everything around me was completely still, even though there was very many people in the room, nurses, doctors, dear friends, a family, and it was like it was all still. It was like I was the only one moving, but in that, I completely knew you are God, and he is. And that's exactly what it ended up being, was work. We had some truly amazing friends, family, we had an amazing church, co-workers, and community support, and because of the efforts of several, we were able to lease an apartment that was 20 minutes from the hospital. So Ava, Hudson, and I lived in that apartment for 8 months, well, 7 plus the month in the hospital. We stayed there throughout her entire treatment. Emma and Rob were in Wichita Falls. During the summer, they were able to come down quite a bit and be with us, and that was great. But the majority of Ava's care fell on me. Hudson was thankfully an amazing baby. Traveling to countless appointments, he stayed in the hospital sometimes with us in a pack and play for as many as 9 to 11 days at a time. He learned to sleep through chemo treatments, through transfusions, through all kinds of procedures, through everything. He learned to just kind of adapt, I guess, and survive. I quickly learned that what the Girl Scouts have been promoting for decades, to always be prepared, was no joke. I literally kept a bag with me with clothes for all of us, ways to take a bath in the sink if we needed, food for, 3 or 4 days. I looked kind of like I was going mountain climbing in the wilderness, and I would get out of the car, and they had a car service at Cooks, and they'd be like, oh, are you checking into the hospital? And oh no, this is just for one appointment. It was it was just, we just never knew. Being a caregiver to someone going through cancer, especially your child, it caused a lot of, I would say, shifting in my thinking. The things that I once held as priorities or in high regard maybe didn't always matter anymore, and new things began to take their place. I learned a lot about myself and about others. I didn't pass every test that was ever given to me. There were times when obviously I was exhausted or mentally just not available to respond in the correct way, but I found that, just as Brother Ross said, God's grace is sufficient. It is. And it's hard, you learn that verse. I learned it as a child, as a teen, as a young adult. And you think, okay, yeah, it's sufficient. And then you get to a place where you don't really have anything left to give, or, there's nothing. It's just kind of like you're a shell. And still there's grace.
Amen.
Still there's God's grace. And it is sufficient. I'm sorry, I lost my place. We were released to go home that December with a few restrictions, but a very different way of life. I remember coming home and just wanting all of us in the same room all the time. Whether we were eating or sleeping or watching a movie or playing a game, I was like, okay, everybody, we just need to all be right here together. I think in part because I had been separated from my family for so long, the other half of them anyway, and then also because Ava and Hudson were, we slept in the same room, we went everywhere together for that. I just wasn't used to them not being right near me. That was an adjustment. My husband was like, it's okay if they sleep in their own beds. And I was like, no, I thought they needed to just switch to sleep in here. So this big pallet right here on the floor. I just wanted everybody together. That April, Ava was released to go to school. She started preschool. She is still in preschool now. She continues to just grow and amaze us. We are able to say now that she's 3 years cancer-free. She will... She'll start kindergarten in the fall, and we look forward to the day when we can say that she's cured. I wish at times that I'd never been introduced to the world of cancer the way that I was. But now that I have, my only choice, or I feel like my only choice, is to act. But the choice isn't mine alone. If you're in this room, it's yours as well. In keeping with this year's theme, I did an abbreviated, I would call, word study. These definitions aren't like Webster's. They are Webster's, but I was like, it's kind of wordy. So I just kind of minimized the definition a little. Super, which means of high grade or quality, and hero, which means one who shows great courage. So all superheroes have one thing in common. They all have a choice to use their abilities to battle the villain or the situation in their particular story. We, as survivors and caregivers, are superheroes in all aspects of the word. We may not bend steel or fly or be able to see through walls, but our courage, strength, and perseverance are what set us apart. A cape and a mask make for a great costume, but they don't always make a great superhero. Who they are, the choice to act, that's what makes them a superhero. Our actions, mine and yours, whether they're things we've done in the past, things we're currently doing, and things that we can plan to do in the future, that's what will continue to make us superheroes. I would just like to thank the American Cancer Society for giving me the opportunity to speak, and for giving everyone the opportunity also to celebrate, remember, and fight back. A difference is being made for a world with less cancer and more superheroes. Thank you.
Becky, thank you so very much. I know that was very difficult for you. Becky told me when I called her that she was not a public speaker, and I must be crazy for wanting her to come and speak. But as you can tell, you did a fantastic job and very inspiring. Thank you. We're going to wrap it up now. So we want to thank each and every one of you for coming out, and we hope that you enjoyed your evening. And as Becky said, you need to act. So that means come out Friday night at 7 p.m. to Relay for Life at McNeil Junior High. And you survivors will walk your survivor walk, and the caregivers will join us for the caregiver walk. And we will continue to fight cancer until we don't have it anymore. Thank y'all so very much for coming.